Welcome back to RP1 release, and this screen shows us some good results. So from last episode, the episode before, you remember we were designing various craft. This is actually the result of the first flight. I didn't have to do anything. There was no failures. I got lucky on that front. However, we also got it done really cheaply as well, and I will show you the craft itself in a second. But the actual result of it is that we ended up with 14 science because we're able to do 2 biosamples. And recovery of a vessel gets you some science as well after suborbital. So that gets us 5 science just by itself. So every time we send a vessel up, no matter what, if it's suborbital, we get 5 science. That's nice. Okay, and parts, well, sending rocket telemetry unit, the battery, and a couple of, well, yes, 2 biosamples. I was thinking there should be 2. And then a parachute, of course. So 445 funds left, and we now have 133,000. Now, we should have a lot less than that because I've gone and invested a lot in tooling this first stage of the rocket. And I'll show you what I did there. But first of all, note that this Proto-1 suborbit, I'm actually going to scrap now. And I wonder if we can actually get some money back. 133, scrap, yes. Yep, back up to 137. Okay, good. Because I came up with something cheaper that would do exactly the same job and get us pretty much the same contract, because we also just fulfilled the contract that was inactive for suborbital return, and that means that we got about 24 grand, and that was kind of the amount that I spent on tooling, or ish. Let's go in and take a look at the vessel. So this is cheap. Basically, what I've got in here is sort of standard body for the first stage and also a standard fairing. You notice that fairing is quite large by comparison to the stuff inside. That's on purpose. I've gone and turned off the auto shape because you want to create a fairing size that is static so that you can tool the fairing, which becomes much cheaper, but you don't, as soon as it changes size, then the tooling would be invalid. You wouldn't have any cost savings anymore. So the cost of this thing is down at 1,200. That's largely dependent upon what's inside the payload bay. If I replace this with a film camera, which if we just change over to the film version of this, biofilm, you'll see that's 999.96. The only difference is that it has a film camera instead of 2 bio canisters, and everything else is exactly the same. There's a battery on the bottom, and there is a sounding rocket telemetry unit just so I can maintain the staging, but other than that, it is relatively simple. We have, if you look at the center of mass, for 1 second, center of mass, that's quite low, and this thing does not have any kind of tanks to worry about, so that's not going to change, which means this end's going to end up pointing downwards when it actually comes back into the atmosphere, and that's exactly what we want as well. So, moving on down, this main stage, which is just one stage really in the whole rocket, is 1.5 meters by 10. If you're going to reproduce it yourself, you'll see over here it's 1 minute 22, which is around about right for the RD101. So that is good as well. Its thrust to weight ratio is lower than previous. I went up from 1.25 meter tanks to 1.5 meter and then tooled to 1.5 meter. So if we have a look in here for tooling, you'll see, yeah, there's nothing really to actually go for. We've already pretty much done it. And you'll see we've already got our tooling for different things that we can look up in future and what we've got in there. So if we have a look up here at the fairing, the payload fairing, basically as long as I use 1.375 meters maximum size and 1.2 cylinder end, 1.5 size, then everything will just use the tooling options. Over here, you'll see all the usual staging, nothing excessive there. I do wish I could get rid of these fins. That will come once we have either a 2-engine cluster at the bottom, which will have better roll control for a start off, because this thing still rolls. Otherwise, we will be fine. We could even take these separation motors off for an even relatively small change in the actual cost, though. However, because that is now done, I added a few of them to the build list. Second effect of doing that tooling is that they become a lot faster. So it's dark at the moment. I will fast forward in a minute, but if you have a look here, the time to build them is down to 46 days, and I've got 2 bios. One was just flown, The second one, we're going to fly the other way. We're going to fly heading west. Let me just fast forward to morning. And then we're going to do the same thing with a film, head one east and one west, or you can even do north and south as well. We want to bulk up our science and not spend too much in terms of currency to actually launch these. And because it's a standard tank across all of these, standard first stage, I'll already be saving money over not tooling or going with the cheap versions. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that overall. So I'll show you one of the flights, and they're all going to be mostly the same. So I'm just going to skip forwards perhaps to the bio one, and we'll fly west or south, maybe even south. It won't go as far, but it may end up in Cuba and Jamaica. I may have sort of sent a present to the Caribbean before, and it has sort of maybe hit land, but you know, we're not going to be too concerned about that right now. Let's get to the flight, and then we'll probably be going into some more missions. Brand new on the just unlocked list, we have early rocketry now. So that has a couple of effects. One is a HTTP upgrade on RCS. We're not really using RCS yet, but we could use those. That's another option by comparison to using those fins. We could try and build some kind of RCS control. It will use up RCS quite quickly though heading up, so I'm not going to do that just yet. And then we have the RD102, which is a performance upgrade. So we should be able to take a look at that and see how much of an upgrade it actually is. Okay, so here's our film version. We're just going to shift that over and let's see what, in fact, let's just look at the engine stats first of all. So down in here, we should see what it actually is. It's at the very bottom, I think. Yeah, the RD102. So its rated burn time is 2 seconds less than before. Okay, that's not a problem. 2 seconds is no difference whatsoever. Let's take a look at the sort of stats of the engines themselves. So here we are. 101 is more thrust, good. And it is a higher ISP, even better. So there should be no reason why we shouldn't use it, I don't think. So let's just go to the engine thing. And it's 15,000 funds, but we're going to purchase that. And then let's just see, is that the same fuel? If I empty the fuel, don't change the tank size, remember, just change the fuel. We're going to go for ethanol. 3329, 1 minute 17, so it'll last a little bit less. But yeah, I'm happy with just switching that over as our standard engine, at least until we get to the 103, which will be sort of the highest tier of improvements, I think, on this. I don't think there's anything higher than 103. 100, 100, 103M, 103, of which the 103M looks like the highest, and is it the best? Let's have a look. Yeah, 103M goes up to 500 kilonewtons of thrust, so yeah, they're equivalent ISPs, but just a little bit higher thrust. Fine, no problem. There is still no multiple ignitions on these things though, so as soon as it shuts down, it shuts down. So if you are, for good, and if you are using MetJeb, remember that whatever your orbit height you plug into it is when your APO reaches that, it will shut your engine off. So make sure if you're using MetJeb to go up, make sure that orbit is set higher than your rocket can reach. Otherwise, yeah, you will waste fuel. Not that I've done that at all. Okay, so the one flight I'm going to show this episode is just the flight of the film camera. So we have flown this before. That's the one I got the contract with, but let's lift off. And you'll see we can immediately take that. So we have a lot of different things we can get the film camera to return a little bit of science for. I really don't want the flying low one. I'd like flying high, and then probably... Oh, wow, I have set that the wrong way. We're going to head west, not east. I was going to go east, but that's okay. We've got 2 of these, remember, because there's lots of science we haven't picked up for the film camera yet, whereas the biosamples, we've already got flying high and space from the one that we got the suborbital return from. So, yeah, I've flown through the one, we've got most of the science from that, at least for now, until we get to space high, which is a ways away yet. And then the film camera we can use to get other science. So let's wait till we're flying high. In fact, no, I want to wait till I get space. Space will be the highest amount of science first. So this will ascend. It's running out of fuel now, but there's still 20 seconds left. And we're going to be heading over in towards the Gulf of Mexico, flying over Florida. And I will install scatter and stuff like that. I do promise, I just haven't done it yet. It does look a lot better when Scatterer comes in. If you haven't seen Scatterer before, it's worthwhile seeing. Alright, so our fuel's about to run out, and we are getting to an APO of 200. Yeah, we're out of fuel entirely. So remember, our MegJeb orbital altitude is higher than what we're able to reach going west, at least. Going east, we'll be able to get a little bit higher. And this is more than good enough. Now, this may seem like pretty much a ballistic missile at this point, but it is, I promise, just going to be just fine. We'll just drop it on an area of Florida that's swamps, you know, it will be fine. So let's just, we're coming up to the common line, so let's just get rid of the payload fairings, and we're also going to get rid of the stage. Okay. Now we no longer have any avionics, and I hope, I didn't check the center of mass of this thing, I hope that's still going to point downwards. We'll see, however. So let's just fast forward up to space, which is 140. There we go, we're at space. And we will then take that, and we're going to be trying recovering it. So let's fast forward again until we get to the atmosphere, and let's see whether this reorients itself. It should, but maybe not. Let's see how heavy this thing is. A bit of a glitching there, but that's something to get used to with realistic progression and real solar system. Yeah, there it is. It's going to reorientate towards the battery. Good. It's exactly what we want, as long as this thing will survive the little bit of heating that it'll going to encounter. And then, oops, I need to press one thing. Press 1 to on the parachute, whatever you do. Otherwise, it will just hit the ocean about 100 meters per second or whatever the terminal velocity of this thing is. So let's just fast forward, and that's actually going to take a while because it's quite a large part, and it's not going to fly through the air particularly well. It's already slowed itself down, even without the parachute, to like 150 meters per second. So it will work fine now anyway. So I'll skip forwards until we come back to the Space Center. And unfortunately, yes, we don't actually get to 5 science every time we do a suborbital. That would be a shame. I want more science. In any case, we are going to get the photography 1.1 science, and we will send it, yeah, I'll send it up again. I've got at least one more to actually go, and that's 38 days away, so plenty of stuff to go there. However, that does give us, or bring us up to 17 science, and then technology improvements. We've got 36 days away. We've got supersonic plane development. And how close is that? That's 38 days. So we're actually going to get supersonic plane development before we do anything else. So I'm going to skip forward to that, and then we'll take a look at what we can actually add to the queue for science. Okay, in our R&D building, here we are. So our supersonic plane development is now available. Lots of expensive parts, mind you, for said supersonic plane development, but there is the conic cockpit, so technically I guess we could stick that on top of a rocket. Depends where the center of mass is, but it's almost like a return capsule. You could try and do that, I suppose, with something on the bottom of it. Depends where the center of mass is, but we'll take a look. Circular intake, small surgical intake, a rocket propellant tank, an X1 cockpit of a different kind. They are equivalent masses though, so I'm not too terribly concerned. Just slightly different looking. And then the propellant tank B, which is basically the end of the back of the plane. And yeah, so that's supersonic planes. And then I think the next one is supersonic flight. Does that get us into mature? Yeah, it's got just lots of other options to add later. Much larger planes, perhaps. Yeah, so B-52 Stratofortress, larger planes, really. But yeah, the supersonic one will help us to build something to get started. You can build a plane from stuff that you get started with anyway. It just won't be supersonic. So it would be nice to have these. Anyway, moving on. We've got 17 science to spend, so we could go up to supersonic flight. And that would be an extra 2 science. We've already got basic rocketry queued. To get any further to orbital rocketry, we have to first go through this node, Satellite Era Materials Science. And that is 10 of our 17 science, but it's vital for us to get any further, so we have to go for that one. We're going to take it. In here, do we have anything really nice? Like, you know, some kind of heat shield? Heat shield? No. Okay, lots of tanks. We'll come back to that later. And lots of different stuff that isn't all that expensive. Yeah, lots of decouplers, fairings, payload bases, more fairings. Tank 3, which is even better than Tank 2, obviously, as you might imagine. And you want to switch up to those as soon as you can, if I remember rightly. It has been a while. Titan. And that's pretty much it. Okay, so we'll come back to that later. We've got 7 sites remaining. Avionics prototypes. That'll be useful. There's different kinds of batteries that you can actually get. Or satellite era science, which gets us more stuff. I always want the science here whenever possible, because that just unlocks even more of this tree compound effect, really. But there is obviously electrics that we actually need to go through. But I think we're going to go for science first, and let's see how that plays out. Now that we've looked at rockets, let's take a quick look at planes, at least to start off with. Now, there's a few problems I should mention in KSP 1.3 so far that I've seen. One is the runway and the terrain surrounding it are uneven, and they're uneven not in a slightly undulating way, they're uneven in, here's a giant ramp that just is like a foot tall and bounces the plane into the air, which invariably causes a crash. So I've tried to find a place where there isn't one of those, and I'll show you roughly where I found so far. So what I've got here is roughly an X1. The real X1, however, was dropped from the bottom of a larger craft. I'm not sure what craft it was. I didn't have it written down, but yeah, the real one was dropped from like almost like a bomb bay kind of thing, and then flew off obviously on a rocket. But we're gonna have to take off. So for just to keep things nice and safe, I put in 4 landing gear. Really, you shouldn't need 4, you should only need 3, but we're not going to go there. So this appears safe enough. More importantly, we've also got our 2 tanks here. We've got a tank 1, and there's the stats if you want to actually copy them down to actually make it. The reason why you need one of these and not the ones that are supplied with the game, with the pack even, if we have a look at the pack, fuel tanks, this one right here, the X1 rocket propellant tank B, is not highly pressurized. Unfortunately, the X1 XLR-11, which is what powers the X1, needs a highly pressurized tank. So I went with tank 1, put it into high pressure mode, and that works. And also, I've emptied both the tanks, then put parachutes down on either side at the center of mass. So that's where the center of mass is, roughly. And that will mean we should be able to come in by landing via parachutes once we slow the craft down enough, rather than trying to land on the incredibly uneven ground. If it wasn't for that, I would try and land on the runway, but until later KSP versions, I would definitely try to just come in with an empty tank and parachutes. Alright, so we'll give this a go and see whether it actually works. I did get it flying once. It's not terribly great. It needs a lot of tuning just to get things in the right place, but it should get us started. So let's just actually start simulation and head on to the runway. Also, I would heavily recommend you you make sure it's like noon, because you're going to be able to need to see the ground and everything around you, ideally. So here we go. We should be loading onto the runway. Okay, here we are on the runway. We are going to, and that's just a bug that should disappear in a second once everything settles, I would imagine. Brakes on. Yeah, I'm not sure why it decided to say it's overheating. It's definitely not. Turn SAS on, and that, you see that black line right there? That's the bump I was talking about, and there's more further down the runway. Even though it looks perfectly flat, what I'm actually going to do is head off this way somewhat, and let's see if we can get a decent start. Let's see what Jebediah, excuse me, let's see what Jebediah does. It is a simulation, so we don't need to worry about him dying, but we would have to on the real launch. So let's get started. And the X1 gets started pretty quickly, so we're going to have to get off the runway and then head over. And this looks okay, doesn't it? It will hit a bump eventually, but we'll need to get up quite significantly in speed in order to take this thing off. I haven't got a huge amount of lift with these wings. I would probably need larger wings to actually get even more lift, but this should do for now. Whoops, and that's what I was talking about. We are going to bounce and bounce again, and there's the crash. So yeah, there isn't anywhere we've got for really smooth takeoffs, and that's really annoying. there's relatively little you can do. Well, obviously in a simulation, you can just restart it and then try again. But in a live thing, that would be Jebediah dead. We don't want Jebediah to die, so let's give this another go again, and let's see if we hit the same problem. So we want ideally somewhere that hasn't got that problem. Wait for things to settle, and us to drop onto the runway. Yep, there we go. And we can fire and then head off, maybe just aiming to sort of miss the... we head off even for... Whoa. Well, we are going to skid around. It's fine. That's fine. We're still okay. Let's head uphill a little bit and let's see if there's anywhere better over there that doesn't have as many bumps. So off we go. And yes, it's yawing a little bit. Oh, it's unstable. We're sliding around like crazy. Well, I suppose this is enjoyable, but it's not exactly what I want. Let's head this way. Yes, let's head this way. Fine. And I'm not going to touch the controls now. Only the front landing gear nose wheel is steering, by the way, on the ground. So we will just leave it to go this way. And we're building speed now. Can we build up enough speed? That's the thing before we actually hit any kind of bump. And I'm going to try and lift off. And we should get lift off somewhere after 110, 120 or so, depending. And 120. Well, there's the bump. Now, can we keep it up in the air? Well, no. No, we need to go in faster. No. So there either needs to be more lift or we need to avoid those bumps. And I haven't figured out how to. Maybe it's just every time it loads the game that will deform the terrain. So for now, I'm going to need to leave planes alone. I've spent quite a bit of money on them. Unfortunately, that's the case with RP1. Sometimes you get problems like this, specifically on the runway. Once we upgrade the runway, it should be straight enough and without any kind of issue. Normally the larger runways are much, much better, but the initial one, at least it's not a dirt track like in regular KSP. But unfortunately, sad face, we can't really go for this. We've still got 100 grand left, even after spending lots of stuff. But yeah, so I will shelve that for now. Well, maybe some of you will come back later with suggestions about increased lift, etc. But that doesn't help the bumpy problem. All right, so on we go. At this point, it's really tempted to take this mission that's at the very top of the list. The first artificial satellite, you'll get 500 grand for taking it, not even for completing it, and you'll get another 180 if you complete it. However, there's some downsides to this. And this again is a couple of construction time coming in. Mainly that if we want to upgrade our launch pad, which we'll need to do, the launch pad right now only deals with 20 tons. It's 75 grand, and I could technically afford it, but leave me quite short, so I'm not going to actually buy it now. However, you're going to need that to get up to 60 tons to be able to make a decent orbiter. I'm not sure if you can actually get it inside 20 tons. If you know if you can, let me know in the comments below, because I'd be very interested to see that particular vessel. I've not managed it. I've tried a little while, and I can get a lot higher than we're currently doing, but not to orbit. So yeah, there is that. So I'm not going to take that mission now, but we're not far from taking it. What we actually really need to do is generate more money. And now that I've got some more science booked in our research queue, then we need to shift over to more money to actually get more of that sorted. And we were able to do these sounding rocket altitudes. The advantage of these is that if you have tooled tanks, you will be able to basically make money on every one. And the lower ones are quite easy for us. This intermediate is quite easy, 140 kilometers with 20 units of payload. And we can modify our sounding, it is a sounding rocket, but we can modify our science rocket just to have a generic tank on top that can store payload, basically, and launch those. And you can launch 5 or 6 of them to actually get some more money booked in. And the advantage of those missions is you can make this even simpler and hopefully somewhat cheaper. If we just take off the fairing for a second, I'm going to use the same standard tool parts that we already have, but let's take you off. We don't need you. We're going to reroute the part back down to you. You. I think that worked. Yes, it did. Good. And then we're not even going to need the battery. So we're really just left with a very, very bare bones rocket, a payload bay. You could even do a fixed payload bay, but because this is tooled, it's almost no cost. And then we're just going to grab a fuel tank of the service module kind, and we're going to reduce its size somewhat, and let's just see even a cone shape. We could even do that kind of thing. That would be kind of interesting. It would certainly fit a lot nicer. And then we're just going to show the user interface and then scroll down as we did last episode, and then add, we can do up to 230. So maybe if we just increase the length of this, so 320, okay, and that still fits in the payload bay. Let's just change the texture to something nicer. There we go. And this is not going to detach at all, so we don't even need this particular thing. So let's just change this to site short 1, and this is SRP for solid sending rocket payload. Yes. Okay. Fine, we can put this back on. Again, we don't really need it, but that should be fine. It is, however, building up in cost. So what we can also do, since we'll be flying a few of these and not on camera, of course, I'm going to then want to tool this tank. And yes, wow, it's going to cost 10,000 funds to tool it. Close, close. Let's look in here. Untooled versus tooled. Yeah, but the tool cost, we need to fly 10 times to be able to make that better. How about if we go for different shapes? What happens to the actual cost of this kind of thing? Anything? It must just be the actual bare cost of service modules. It'd be nice if the other tank type would actually support ballast. Well, not ballast, sorry, sounding rocket payload. It'll do ballast, it won't do the sounding rocket payload. Yeah. So if you want to tool a tank for sounding rockets, it's going to cost a lot of money. However, we're going to get 3 grand for each launch, so you got to choice there whether to gain about 1,800 or so on top of this, or whether you want to gain a bit more but fly at least 10 times to actually do it. I don't know how well that's going to work, but we're going to profit regardless, so I'm going to leave it untooled for now. And because we can actually just create this back to that earlier shape, that should be fine. And of course, because it's not untooled, we don't need to worry about it. We can always modify it per mission. So we can save this somewhat once we resort the staging out. We don't even need that really, but, and in fact we don't even need this. Should we just make it a the service tank be the actual outer? Let's just see what this actually would cost. Let's just take it off, put it there for now, and just make the entire service tank a smooth cone. And what size is this? 1.5. So let's just go to 1.5. And the top is 0. Then the length, let's bring it up to, I don't know, 2 meters. Maybe a bit longer, 2.5. Okay, looks more like a missile, I'll admit, but we can then put whatever we want in here, and we don't need any of that, so that can go away. That's, however, even more expensive. Is that just related to the size of this thing? Let's just bring down the size of this. Yeah, it is related to the size, so we should probably bring this down as much as we can. Cone, cylinder. Yeah, there's not much difference between those. But smooth cone immediately ups it. So maybe it's just volume related. That's fine. I will put together something suitable. Let's just bring in the diameter. And because it's not tooled, we can modify this as much as we want and customize it per mission. So we can bring that down to 1300. That doesn't mean we'll need to actually have the, and it's only 684 without that. We do need to have the payload bay back again, but that's fine. I can resort that out. And that's now configured with this carrying 210 units, which is one of the mission requirements. You could fill it up with fuel as well. In fact, that may be a decent idea, but we shouldn't fill it with very much fuel. Yeah, not very much fuel at all. In fact, a tiny amount by comparison to what we've got here, so it's almost not worth it. But I guess we can actually do that. Is that actually let's just remove all of these. Did it make any difference in cost whatsoever? Nope. Okay, that's fine. So we're ready to actually build this, and let's just save everything, add it to the build queue, and that will let me do multiple things. So let's just exit here. And we're going to be able to take the mission whenever we want. Now, but previously we've have to wait until the rocket's almost constructed before taking the mission, because the missions are 90 days long. Now this rocket will be done in 74 days. So as long as the rocket itself doesn't fail, then the mission shouldn't be too bad. So we can actually take this mission so that we don't get this mission expiring and changing to a different amount. We don't want this to actually change because it'll expire in 15 days. So if we don't accept it, it could change. So let's just accept this one. And let's see if we can get 210 units of payload up to 100 kilometers. And it looks like we'll be able to do that just fine. We're coming up on Apo 80 kilometers now, and we've got plenty of fuel. Downside is that the launch itself costs 4,000. I keep forgetting about that cost. So we may have to figure out a way of getting that on a smaller rocket. This one will certainly do the job, but I'm not sure it'll be particularly profitable, if not break even. We're on 95, I think we started around 98-ish. And we'll certainly get to 300 kilometers, so that's easily enough done. But yeah, we have problems otherwise. We need profit. If any of you have any particular suggestions about how to get profit, feel free to put them in the comments below, as you normally would. And of course, out we go into space. And that's the 100 kilometers, so that should be our mission contract. Send a rocket difficult, we get 3,800. So that's putting us sort of right back where we started. Yeah, and all of that can go away as well. And we're back up to 99. Maybe slightly profitable, but this thing isn't recoverable. So yeah, we're doing missions for mission's sake at that particular point. Oh, I suppose we can get rid of that. Not that that'll help particularly when this thing comes back down, but it's not spinning, so it makes it remarkably easy to just hit range safety if I have the option on this procedural avionics. Yes, I do. And that can go away. All right, back to the Space Center, and we're ready to finish up the episode, I think. So I had a couple of upgrade points, and we could buy more if we had more money, but we don't have right now. That's one of the other ways to accelerate things. If you do take that, mission for early satellite, you get 500 grand, so you can spend much of that on upgrades, and then you can push the upgrades into tech. Tech then has these nodes. Now, the important ones for us are early science and basic rocketry. Early science being the Geiger molotube, the Geiger counter basically, and the ion mass spectrometer. That'll get us more science, which will then let us unlock more nodes. Basic rocketry is the upgrade to the RD-103 and I think there may be another upgrade in there as well, but the one after that is the 103M, and all the other rockets, all the really good early ones like the AJ-10 and the LR-89, 79, all those other kind of ones, all in the rocket node after this one. But both of these nodes combined will take a year, and we're on year 3, day 78 here. Also note that when you upgrade this launch pad, it will take a year as well to go to the 60 tons. So as soon as you actually start it, you're going to be waiting a while. All right, and you only got 2 years for that satellite mission. So it's up to you entirely if you take it. I'm going to actually go a little bit further before I take that mission, and we can just we can warp just straight to it. But the only downside with RP1 versus RP0, i.e. the previous version, is that your facilities will continue to take money while you fast forward. So be careful about not just fast forwarding needlessly, because you can incur costs per year. The astronauts, they'll retire if they're not used. Yeah, so there's lots of stuff to try and do to keep things ticking over while we're actually moving through here. So you want to design some missions to make extra money while you're heading towards these nodes, nodes in the R&D tree. Okay, so next episode we'll carry on. I will be doing some, probably there may be a gap between episodes now because I may be doing more of those contracts, trying to get things even cheaper. Again, I'll be reading your comments below. And when we come back, we'll probably be at this early science stage, or maybe even basic rocketry stage, because you've seen the science experiments. There's not much new to actually do there. The basic rocketry, however, will enable new rockets. Hopefully join me for that. If you've enjoyed the episode, give it a thumbs up. Otherwise, subscribe, share, click on the bell if you want notifications. More importantly than all that, leave comments below for other people about suggestions for different rocket designs. Hopefully, you'll beat mine. Well, you probably will, let's face it. All right, thanks a lot for watching, guys, as always, and we'll see you next time for some more RP1 release.